YouTube and all our other channels. Welcome to another episode of UC Lab Tells You Some Stuff. I'm going with that one this week, Fuad.
Yes.
You didn't see that one coming. Throwing you a curveball already. So this week's topic, everybody, is introduction to the transformation cloud era. What does that mean? Well, according to a lot of cloud providers, especially Google, we have gone through a number of eras of cloud transformation. I remember back in the start of my career, the big thing at that time was virtualization, which was taking your data center full of computers, let's say you had 12 servers, and turning that into 24, 48, however many. That was things like VMware and similar services. The shift over the years have been to taking those, on-premise machines and putting them up into the cloud. A little more on that, Fuad, or Parth, if you will.
Well, I think from there, we have seen businesses craving to bring the entire infrastructure to cloud. And that's still happening. We see there's a tremendous gap, and businesses still need that. So there's tremendous opportunities. But now we see from infrastructure, as we have done a lot of that, businesses now actually realize the full potential of cloud, and they are actually in a new era, in an era where it's no longer about just going on cloud and being able to access everything on cloud, but actually getting smarter, doing things in complete different way, and that brings new possibilities. uh, yeah, and I think,
Yeah,
Justin, what you were talking about, we saw that moving to cloud in the early stage of the history of cloud, it was only for technology companies. It wasn't
Yeah, and
really
that
used.
was the objective. It wasn't to do anything other than to be on the cloud. Perhaps there's some cost benefit there. It wasn't necessarily to access, crazy new tools or do anything like that. It was just to, not have the overhead of managing a data center or buying space at co-location or things like that.
Now
yeah,
we
it's taking
see.
so much.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Parth.
Sorry, so it's taking so many operations away from the businesses that you can focus on your business and instead of focusing on cloud operations and managing your servers, and that's very
Y-
important for
Yeah,
rapid development and
and I
getting
like
to
that.
market.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that because I remember, like, again, early on in my career, there was a place here where I haven't even thought of data centers because we've been in the cloud for so long. But I recall I was on site with a client, and I think I was helping them with a website issue they were having. And I got a call. Well, one of our servers is on fire. So I had to, hop in the truck because we were in a caged data center, private data center, and, drive as fast as I legally could to our offsite location to unlock the cage and figure out which server was belching smoke. I mean, that is the small business experience right there for you. At least, circa 10 years ago.
and today you get a report of how it fixed itself after everything's completed.
Yes, the self-healing. You don't hear about the fires anymore.
Right.
So let's talk about that. That's crazy. You can wake up and you can actually, without being impacted in any way in your business um, operation, you'd be just reading a report that this is how it was self-healed. Maybe you'd be charged a little bit more because you needed more resources at that time to heal and so forth. But like that's transformative. Like, you actually don't need around the clock server administrators monitoring. I am sure there were cases where, at least I have seen, that we had to wake people up because servers broke down.
If that was the middle of the night, I mean, chances are I would have been getting up out of bed to do that, and it
Yeah.
would have been an even longer commute.
Well, that is the biggest
Whereas,
selling point today. Um, how much automation, how fast it can heal itself, and how fast it can scale. Yeah. Sorry, Justin, you were saying something.
no problem. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is that I mean, this is a very extreme case. I mean, servers were catching fire every day. I won't say what brand server it was. Dell. Um,
And
but
Justin, I think this is still not so uncommon. I mean, not probably servers catching on fire, but whenever there is a huge jump on traffic on certain website, we see they still have difficulties managing and giving the experience. Recently, I think during COVID times, we saw on certain vaccination websites, you actually literally had to wait for your queue to get to the website.
yeah, well, I mean, let's consider the mechanics of that, right? So, I mean, your site gets load that's you know unexpected. You have to have some kind of mechanism to load balance that. And I mean, it's not a cloud load balancer at that point. It's either something that's happening at the DNS level or within your own cluster. Um, and then you have to have servers available that are replicated between the two so that you're not, going out of sync with your data in order to serve additional capacity. Whereas, now you're looking at Google Cloud, and I think Parth is probably the better one to explain this because he's built this for us. Um, these servers just scale endlessly and handle all the replication and all the data management and everything.
Yeah, and the best part is that all that happens in all the regions. So you're still
Yes.
served from the region closest to you. You don't have to get your data from USA if you're somewhere in Asia.
And
So
that's the big
that's
thing now is the
yeah,
edge almost didn't exist, 15 years ago. Um, if you wanted to serve East and West, you need a data center in, I'll give it from a Canadian perspective, Montreal and Vancouver. That's your East and West. There was nothing in the middle in Canada. I guess like Iowa, USA is where the middle would have been and still is in some ways. But I mean, that's what you're looking at. You have to own or rent physical servers East and West if you want to load balance between your East and West customers. That's not even considering Europe. That's not considering Asia,
yeah.
growing markets. Um, so I mean, it's almost impossible without a significant infrastructure investment on your part to do this without cloud services.
Yeah. Well, and geographical differences usually don't cause too many problems, but when we're at scale, even just a single second is really important when we're serving uh, huge amounts of traffic. So yeah, it's really
Mhm.
important to have
I mean, we just
geographic.
talked about it. We just talked about it last week. I mean, Google is really looking at those speed metrics right now. They want to give a good mobile first experience to users,
Yeah.
and I mean that is rewarded in your search rank. It's rewarded in your CPC costs. Um, so yeah, I mean that's where we're at with. And you know what's funny is the conversation is supposed to be about the transformation cloud, but this is still talking about just the cloud. I mean, so that's where we've been. So where are we going?
Yeah.
So let's look at things like Parth, CI/CD. What is the concept of CI/CD?
So the idea is to have, so previously when we wanted to deploy something, there's specific people working in the company who know how to deploy, who know the server operations. But
System
now,
administrators.
right, right, and but we don't want to rely on that when if you're building a new feature, you want to test it right away on the cloud, right, on your one of your uh, maybe testing or your development environments. Now, the idea here is when you push a new feature to your code repository, you want it to deploy right away. You want to automate that process. There should not be another click other than the push that you just push to the repository, and that's it. That should
Hmm.
be the only thing we need to do, and that's what the individual developers are doing. So we saw the power of we saw the advantages of using that in our case um, with development of BlueCap and how it helped accelerate the development because for the most part there were limited number of people who knew cloud, but then none of our developers had to rely on them to test their work. All they had to do is push new code, and they can see in our Google chat, where we might actually show that later. They can see
Hmm.
the status of their deployment, and yeah, that's pretty powerful. when it comes to
And we're
development.
using at the end of that, basically, it pushes out to our kind of serverless environments, which is, I guess, the next stage of Kubernetes. We're using Cloud Run, I believe.
We're using Cloud Run. So Cloud Run is it automates. There's a way to automate Kubernetes, but you can just use standalone Cloud Run as well. And it's literally takes away all configuration that you have to do to create an auto-scaled environment on a VM. Basically, what you're doing is provide a Docker image, and that's about it. It's going to manage everything. So you give one Docker image, and it's going to deploy it production ready to the region that you want. It's that fast. It takes a minute to go to full production mode from your code, and that's really powerful.
Yeah, I know, because orchestrating the staff requirements to do a normal update, a normal rollout is pretty huge. And now the individual developer, with the proper checks and balances in the process, can now roll out code at least to a development server, by themselves almost. I mean, because the build process is laid out ahead of you. We use this for a number of our clients. We also use it for BlueCap that you're seeing below here. And it's worked out quite well. I mean, that's the developer's perspective on it. Fawad, what has that meant for you as someone who's a product
That's
manager?
interesting.
Well, for me, it meant a whole new world of possibilities. No downtime, and time to market, meaning time to getting the new feature in the hand of users. It was that much faster at the speed I needed. In terms of traditional workflow, it was very frustrating. Even when couple of things would go wrong, it wasn't flexible enough for us to switch things on and off in granular ways so that we can have least impact and so forth. So for me, it was
I think and I think over time, the CAA project was the most interesting because that was originally launched on, I believe, Google Cloud Compute, and then we had migrated them to Cloud Run in the long term. So that really reduced the lag time between requests. Yeah.
In terms of going
go ahead.
serverless, absolutely, it really helped us to scale.
And I think we even benefited from that up to yesterday. I think Google Chrome pushed out a release, and I think we had it fixed in an hour, and uploaded to the live servers, tested, really collaborative, workflow, and it was quick. And that is huge for our customers. They love that. They love the fact that they can find an issue and have it resolved within an hour without orchestrating everyone in the universe to get it done.
Right, and you didn't have to wait for me, the cloud guy.
Yes, I loved that part. We were all able to go through the work stages of pushing it to internal dev, external testing, production.
We didn't have to wake anyone up.
No, we were able to fix it with the least amount of people possible in the quickest amount of time, which is huge.
Now, Justin and Todd, were you going to show us something about this beautiful CI/CD alerts and notifications?
Yeah, I love talking about this. Well, Parth should love talking about it because he came up with it. So let's show. What are we looking at here, Parth?
So before that, we can go to the Google chat before we talk about the bot.
I'm into
the deployments channel.
Deployments.
It was at the top.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Someone ran a deployment. Gotcha.
So the best part here is we built a little program. We call that BlueCap 2 because it's very intelligent, just like our BlueCap that we see in this meeting. And what it basically does, it sends you updates in one of our channels. Now we use Google Chat, but this could be anything: Slack, Microsoft Teams, wherever your developers are actively communicate. And whenever we have these branches in our code repositories, and each branch represents a certain environment, a deployment environment. And when you push something to one of the branch, all the developers are going to get their updates right in this channel, right in this group. of
This
and
is
see
one of
this.
my favorite ones because I can see when something's coming to fruition.
Right, if you're deploying your front end, back end, or the name of the project, everything at one place, and that helps us keep track of things, and that helps the developers to visualize because they usually don't have access to the GCP environments.
Mm-hmm.
But
Because I don't need it really.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, having all the updates at one place helps everyone.
I think one of the cool channels for me is these ones, the errors, because I like seeing the collaboration that goes on in it. Because you see an
Right.
error, someone's alerted, and then we know when it's fixed, and that's cool for me. Trying to figure out, what are clients
Yeah.
going through right now? What's the status of the fix? Um, I just love this cloud workflow because we're a global team. Everybody's working from every end of the earth here, and we all have the same information. We work in sync through tools like Google Chat, through tools like Google Cloud. And I'm saying Google Cloud because that's what we use, but I mean you can do the same thing on AWS or Azure, like you're saying.
Yeah. So basically, we have a version of BlueCap that looks over how BlueCap's working and sends us updates on Google Chat. So if there are any errors within the bot itself or the UI, everything, and the deployments, we get all the updates here. And then we also get updates for the auto scaling process that we're getting into now. So you can get into that.
I'm really proud of you guys. Us. We're very smart the way we work, the
I,
workflow.
I love it. I mean, I feel like I'm not lacking for information at any stage of the development cycle.
Right.
I mean, we haven't
I
even
like
talked
that.
about how we work in terms of coding. I think 40% of it, is it not done with Copilot?
It
Well,
is.
don't tell anyone that. Jeez.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's a trade secret.
Yeah, it's
It is. My apologies. We'll cut it out for math.
now we got to charge 40% less, Fuad. What have you done? All right, what are we looking at, Parth?
Yeah, so this is BlueCap taking care of itself. So it's telling us how big are we scaling. So when we see the bot, right, we see one right in this meeting. It joins as a person in the meeting and listens to the conversation. And every time it does, it spawns an instance of itself. It's basically a process that's doing all the work. And so we call this process the bot process, and we have certain auto scaling procedures in place that scales our infrastructure in the backend based on the number of bot processes that are running. So essentially based on the number of active meetings. So right now, what we're seeing so if you go back to Google Chrome, Justin, yeah. So this is we're getting live updates on how many instances of the bot process are active right now and how long they have been active. And we also have some instances that are idle because we don't want to start the scaling when the request comes in, right? We want to be ready for a new request. So we have a couple of instances idle, waiting for new meetings to join instantly. And then we have about 5 meetings active right now, 4 meetings.
Mhm.
And we also get how long the server has been active and some other information. And we have some control from here. We're able to, if manually replace all the servers in case there's a need, we can forcefully remove a meeting if we want to. It does downscale automatically. So if a meeting ends and we don't want 4 or 5 idle instances, so it's gonna scale down by itself to 2 idle instances.
I love this because this is billing efficiency at its finest because
Yeah.
you need open capacity in order to have BlueCap
Right.
available to you immediately, but at the same time you don't want to pay for more instances than you could possibly use at any given time. So this is a very efficient way of managing that overall billing
Right.
overhead. We're never using more than we need, but we always have capacity in order to take on new, meetings or customers or instances at any given time. So, in practice
And
here, what is a Blue Cap instance?
so an instance is just a process, a bot process. So it is a VM instance on GCP, if that's what you mean.
Okay. Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I meant. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. So it is a VM instance that is orchestrated using a process in the background. So the reason why we see two idle instances at any point is also very interesting. It's not always two instances. That depends on the amount of traffic that we have during the day. So if we start getting a lot of traffic, it's going to have more idle instances, so it can serve more traffic immediately. So that if five meetings come in at the same time, we want to be ready for that. So for peak times, it's going to adjust itself to have more idle instances. And we usually have less traffic in the middle of the night, after midnight, then it scales down to just one instance. So that is also based on the analytics that we have of our traffic, of the usage
Very
of
cool.
BlueCat bot. Yeah. And we just saw one
This
of
is
the instances turn idle. It should go away
yes, I
anytime.
noticed.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
No, this is a perfect example of things you can do in the cloud that you would have a very difficult time doing anywhere else. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably the deepest
yeah.
we've ever gone into the technical parts of Blue Cap.
So if we go back to
Pending
Google's
everyone.
one last thing,
Yeah, where
sorry,
we
one
want to go?
last thing. If we go back to Google Chat,
Hmm.
yeah. So before we had the live view, we did have some updates in Google Chat. So it periodically sent us how much traffic is being used by the bot process. But eventually we switched. We wanted instead of periodic updates, we wanted something live. That's where we switched to. But yeah, it could be anywhere. You can get the updates anywhere. With Slack, Google Chat, Teams. Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
analytics. I love data. I love feedback. So this is the union of all those things in the cloud, and it's I could say it's transformed work for us, right, Fuad?
Yes, it is. Well, thank you for not giving any more than that up. That's a lot of
Yeah, no
secrets.
more trade secrets, none.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the most I could share.
Anything
Justin,
else, we need an NDA.
Justin, you
Yeah.
triggered my mind by mentioning yesterday's event. There's another small little subtopic I wanted to bring up. We were able to actually isolate what users were having trouble with, and it was actually was it browser specific? Yes, browser specific.
It was semi-browser specific. Yeah, it was a Chromium update, which affects Edge and Chrome.
Now, traditionally, business leaders would say, turn the site down, put the maintenance page up, and yes, they're. I mean, with good reasons, they're right. Users would be frustrated if they cannot complete their tasks and so forth. And we did the same, except here's how transformatively we did it differently. We used Google Optimize. We launched an immediate experiment only for that specific browser users, and only they were given a maintenance page, while the rest of the world continued
Yep,
life
Firefox,
life
Safari, and all the others were able to keep going.
life as usual. And again, as Justin was saying, the site was down not even an hour, probably not down, sorry, that the specific number of users who were affected, they were only affected for 10-15 minutes. And guess what, the site has hundreds and thousands of users per hour. But ultimately, if I go into the reporting, we only impacted 22 people, and we served them properly. There is no frustration.
Yeah, I mean, it was an annoying problem. It was a user feedback issue. You weren't able to see that anything you were doing was actually working, which was a little bug in the end. But yeah, I mean, that could have had huge economic impact if it was just a blanket, everyone's down until it's fixed. I mean, that is the power of using these cloud tools.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't even share my screen at that when I was doing it, but I was actually sharing the metrics. We launched this particular campaign, not campaign experience yesterday. Immediately took us a few minutes. We actually did it based on a couple of combinations, Chrome, and again with the number of minutes when the site was down, we only impacted 22 people.
And two of them were probably you and me, and actually, yeah, four of those are probably related to the project, so even less.
So versus hundreds of users being impacted. So this
That's
kind of
incredible.
that's incredible. Yes, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt. You guys continue.
No, that was great, and I think we were transitioning on to your part of this anyway, Fawad. I believe you wanted to talk a little bit about tools like Workspace and even BlueCap a little bit more.
Yes, I think as it is, fully understood, realized the power, the transformative powers that cloud brings on the table, but we see that most enterprises have the ability, the capability to benefit out of it, and the least leveraged it is the small and medium-sized businesses. They have realized, they hear enough that data and analytics and AI are important, cloud is important, but they don't know where to start. They don't have the resources to start. They don't know how it will actually benefit them for their particular use case and so forth. And that creates, bigger and bigger gap. At least what we have seen now. We talk to small entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. They're like, I don't need AI, or I don't know how it can fit me.
I don't want the cloud because I'm too small for the cloud.
Yeah, but they are actually already using cloud, and they could use cloud if they know how it could transform their business, small and medium-sized businesses, and if they also know that they don't need millions of dollars capital investments to actually leverage the full benefit of cloud, then there's opportunities for them. And there is
Absolutely.
tools like, if you take a look at Google Workspace, it's really a cloud native application that's built in with lots of AI across different features and so forth. One of them, for example, let's take a look at security. Often small businesses, clinics, for example, they say, I cannot go on cloud. My patient data, my internal, external data, they cannot mingle, I cannot. So let me show you how clinics, for example, using Google
I
Workspace.
also want to point out to anyone, we proved that clinic wrong.
Now here, if a clinic in Canada, USA, anywhere, if you were to use Google Workspace for collaborating with your internal staff or external, you could actually keep a tab on, how sensitive information is being shared. If you're a financial company, you'd be automatically using AI to understand how your staff is interacting with this sensitive content and if you need to tap into something. Now, all of our HIPAA information and security information that you will see that we're in violation is because we're working with, a lot of different format of data, and not necessarily all this data are actually real data. But you could use AI again to actually monitor security and comply with your regulatory boards and so forth, and bring your small business into the cloud, like healthcare, as an example. Next thing is the thing that we always talk about. The ability to work smarter for smaller organization is more important than any other business. So tools, for example, BlueCap, that captures the data, processes the data, and actually builds you the database that you need to activate your intelligent actions, cognitive actions at scale. Again, small businesses could afford things like that. Now, which in traditional concept, if you wanted to use natural language processing in customer service, you're talking about a lot of money, a lot of investment. Businesses now are also asking how can they work even more smarter in terms of delivering better customer experience. And here's a video. We can start with that, and then I would like to show you some live examples.
Actually, but before the video, I just want to touch on one thing we kind of went over here, and it's the power of these cloud um, workspaces, not just Google Workspace, but even 365. How often do we run into this scenario? We have a client that we want to sign up for Blue Cap. They don't run one of these cloud systems. They have no way of signing up. I mean, that's not a unique problem to Blue Cap. That is a problem to almost any SaaS out there, which is designed to work with these systems. If you have traditional POP3 email or IMAP email, you're completely missing out on an entire world of tools because they're tied right into those cloud systems, and your POP email is not. So you're really hamstrung if you're using traditional email in today's environment. I mean, when there's 365, Workspace, and other comparative tools out there. Sorry, Fuad, we can go ahead with the video. I just wanted to get that out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Justin. Now, as we said, companies are asking how they can work smarter, and Parth showed, Justin talked about so many things. Now let's take a look at how can we improve, transform experiences for our customers, for example. Let's take a look at an example of contact center.
Hi, Prisha. Thanks for calling our bank. How can I help?
Hi, I'd like to pay my bill.
Great. Can you please verify your address?
15 State Street. Oh, and how much is it?
Virtual Agent provides immediate conversational support with customers directing the flow.
You owe $150. Do you want to pay with the account ending in 1337?
Yes, please.
Done. I've sent an email confirmation. Is there anything else?
Virtual Agent can take care of basic fulfillment on the spot.
Yes, actually, there's a $35 charge I don't recognize.
From last week? It looks like it's an overdraft fee.
Oh, that's not fair. I didn't know.
Okay, let me transfer you to a specialist to help.
More complex cases are seamlessly handed off to a human agent.
Hi, Prisha. I'm Elliot. I see you're concerned about the overdraft fee.
Yeah, I didn't know I would get charged.
Okay, I can waive the fee this time, but would you like overdraft protection so it doesn't happen again?
Agent Assist listens in, giving real-time, step-by-step guidance.
Yes, please.
Okay, I've set it up. Is there anything else?
No, this was great. Thanks a lot.
Lastly, Insights gives you real-time visibility into key call drivers and sentiment.
Well, thank you. Now, you can see traditional IVR where you have to go through, please press 1 for this, press 2 for that, and then you have submenus and so forth. It'll take you a while to get to the right person, let alone getting your task completed, and so forth.
And I think customers come to us a lot and they say they're in the position where sometimes this is a problem that wants to be tackled with hiring. And we're not against hiring anyone, but when you think about it, AI scales limitlessly. So the example we just saw, at least for the first half of the conversation, scales to as much as you're willing to pay. Whereas a human being, you have throughput. You can do X number of calls in an hour, which I want to point out is bad for the human too, because I think we both worked in call centers, right, Fuad? And what was the most uncomfortable conversation you always had at the call center? You didn't get your throughput. And, AI kind of eliminates that because it kind of lets the staff you already have breathe a little bit. They don't have to actually handle half the calls because as we all know, most calls to a call center are very simple. There are things that are common. There are things that are reproducible. There are things that, are going to happen more than once. So when you insert AI into the mix there, you can handle, up to 50% of your calls right there. And then the second half of that is really cool, is because you're actually helping the staff that you do have get to the resolution quicker.
100%. And I think if if you design the AI conversation carefully, almost 80 to 85% of conversations in contact center could be handled right, at the spot.
I was being very conservative with 50, but yes.
Well, I'm actually referring to Accenture and Accenture's research, and that's a huge number. With that kind of calls properly handled, imagine how much burden could be removed from the actual floor, from the actual humans, and they could be actually solving real frustrations, real use cases where humans like us really need to be, not solving repetitive problems. Now, I was going to show you guys an example of real use case. How, let's take Google for example, how their sales contact center sounds like, and then let's take another one. Justin, if you have one in mind, I was thinking PetSmart, and
Yeah, I mean, and we're not picking on PetSmart here. I mean, and I'm going to say 80% of businesses are going to have that experience when we call them.
and you know what? Let me just find PetSmart Maryville's phone number. Usually, a place I often call to have my Mocha stay overnight.
Ooh, the pet hotel.
Pet hotel. My Mocha is not a big fan of the place. But let me share my screen. I just found their phone number and I'm going to call them. Let's go through the journey. They may have...
He's even calling in the cloud. I love it.
We're going to talk about, what are the cons of cloud and perhaps some of the things that you may need to strategically think, to stay and remain more flexible in terms of multi-cloud vendors and so forth. We're going to get to that, but don't look at me because I probably do too much of cloud and everything is on cloud. I could sleep in cloud.
Thank you for calling your neighborhood PetSmart, where we'll do anything for pets. For hours and location, press 1. For the grooming salon, press 2. For curbside pickup of an online order, press 3. For pet training information, press 4. For fish, bird, small animal, and reptile information, press 5. For the Pets Hotel and Doggy Day Camp, press 6. Thank you for calling the PetSmart Pets Hotel with Doggy Day Camp. If you're calling to make a new overnight reservation or change an existing overnight reservation, press 1. If you're calling to make a new day camp or to change an existing day camp or daycare reservation, press 2. If you're calling for location, hours, pricing, or other general hotel or doggy day camp information, press 3. Calls may be recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. Your estimated wait time is less than 2 minutes.
All right, let's hang up before we waste someone's time.
All right, at least the music was really nice.
I mean, by elevator music standard, yes.
Yeah, the happy music.
Yes, I have to say, some places they're very creative about music. Actually, I can't even remember. There was this one place they even asked me what type of
Yes,
music.
I remember when we worked at MediaForce. I remember we were all in the office listening to that because it was just so wild that you could pick the genre of music you wanted.
Yeah. Now let's call Google, actually. Let's see how they handle this call. Now, the previous call, I actually forgot to grab the number of minutes. By the time I reached my intent,
about a minute 20.
About 1 minute 20.
Thanks for calling the Google Workspace team.
Oh,
We're here to answer your questions and find the right sales team to help customize a solution for your business. Just so you're aware, we might collect some personal information, like your email address, to give you support. And your call might be monitored or recorded for quality training or to improve Google's services. For more about our privacy practices, feel free to check out our website at policies.google.com/privacy. Now, just to make sure, you're calling about Google Workspace, correct?
yes.
Got it. And are you calling about Workspace for business or personal use?
I would say business.
Okay. Do you already have an account?
Nope.
In that case, welcome. Hold on while I connect you to a specialist.
Okay, someone from our sales team will be on in a few. Hang on.
Right? No, press 1, press 2, press 3, and then carefully, and then what? Press start again if you want to rehear again, Come on.
For traditional IVRs have always bothered me because it's have you called the CRA recently or any of the government agencies?
I'm scared to call them, so I haven't.
I'm scared to call them. We won't get into that. I had a Cerberus payment to do, and it was actually one of the worst things I've ever had to do in my life, simply because they got the money and then they lost it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. When you call them, literally to get into the 20 to 30, 40, 50, 60-minute wait queue, you have to listen to recordings and menus, and they're confusing, and all I want to do is get my specific intent satisfied. And like listening to IVRs it zones me out. It ruins my concentration for the actual problem I'm having. And it's just so life sucking. But the thing I liked about the Google one you just showed us is it feels like a conversation. It feels like I'm talking to someone right away, which is less draining than listening to droning.
Absolutely. Now, Justin, Parth, you've talked about how we work smarter, how there's options for security, again, using transformative cloud and so forth. Now let's talk about some, constraints that we faced, some experiences that we have had that, if we go back a couple of years or 5 years back, we would have had taken certain decisions differently. And I think we're talking about it. So let's get into that what we need to be aware, how we can be more flexible, how we can save ourselves from being locked to a specific cloud vendor. And we know, right, every cloud vendor has their agenda before the mass cloud adoption happens to lock us to their platform so that, we can't make a quick jump. And also how we can evaluate what path to take and how some of the experiences we have had, maybe that's where we can start from.
Yeah. So, from our journey so far using cloud, we have learned some things, some of the things the hard way on how to utilize these cloud services. So the cloud providers often do too much for us, and it's often tempting to use everything that they provide. It's tempting at first, and then once you realize that that's the thing that you're stuck with forever, or it's very hard to migrate your application from one service to another. And so it's often important to draw a line how much you rely on just a single cloud provider, to the point where it's impossible for you to ever switch your cloud provider, right? For instance.
Yeah, like how proprietary is the tool you're using, and I think
Exactly.
we fell into this in the database realm of things, I believe.
Right. And
We've gone with a very proprietary database.
so it is possible to use open source tools on the cloud. So it's not like you shouldn't use the cloud, but if possible, we would we usually recommend going for open source over the cloud, as opposed to using just everything proprietary that the cloud providers are providing. And one of the examples is Firebase, for example. In one of our older projects, we relied too much on Firebase, some of the Firebase features, and this project was growing very fast and it was changing direction a lot. So we often hit roadblocks where we couldn't scale further with our features that we had, and we were stuck with everything Firestore. We were stuck with the features and the abilities of Firestore. Some of the things we were stuck with Cloud Functions. So sorry, the Firebase functions. So the bottom line here is when we work. So for smaller projects, definitely, it's a great tool. It helps you accelerate your development. You get to focus more on the business perspective than the operations. So when the projects are definitive and smaller, these proprietary tools are really good and they help you accelerate. But for a little larger projects where you're not sure what direction that they might go, it's usually best to go for open source technologies over the cloud. And that has a few benefits. Number one is you always have the ability to switch your cloud provider with the minimal effort. Of course, there's some effort. You can't always have a zero effort migration, say from GCP to AWS, but it certainly minimizes the effort when we're using open source.
Well, it goes from impossible to entirely possible, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, if you were using MongoDB, it'd be so easy to move that from GCP to AWS to Azure. But if you're using Firebase, that's not AWS's product.
AWS. Can we run Firebase on AWS? You can.
Oh, well, or even AWS DynamoDB. It certainly has some amazing features, very low latency and all those things. But if it's a large project, I want the freedom to ever move away from AWS. And I can't do that if my application is using DynamoDB to the core. So it's really unreasonable. The time is not very good if you're talking about switching databases. It's not so easy.
And I think the interesting part of it is a lot of these packaged tools are actually available in all their parts, so to speak. So, I mean, they've just packaged a series of their tools into one thing. Like, for example, we talked earlier about Cloud Run, which is really just, amped up Kubernetes. So yeah, like what you're saying is all these things are available for you to build. It's just, a matter of, is it a small enough project where time is the big issue? Or is it, long-term sustainability that you're going for? Which, I mean, for every large project, that's, one of the major considerations.
And that's subjective.
In my understanding, let me know if I'm in the wrong direction, but particularly when it comes to databases, I think this becomes more relevant, evaluation that is, or any major component, but things like Kubernetes, serverless computing and so forth, that is hands up, that's going to be a great solution for your entire infrastructure. But when it comes to database, I think, as Justin was saying, and Parth was saying, if your project is not well defined and you don't have the scopes to map the features and the database capabilities, then you must start with something that's more flexible for you. And that's where the open source databases comes in handy.
Yeah, you don't get to choose your database again and again. That's usually a one-time decision.
Yeah, you set it and forget it.
It's not an easy job.
Right.
I mean, we were thinking of transforming into different databases. every time we thought of it, we evaluated the effort, the business cost opportunities, and time opportunities and everything. We happen to be pushing it now. And ultimately, that is, uh, that is constraining some innovations. Or we have to, over time, the total cost of ownership is definitely higher for us not evaluating properly, in the beginning.
So you got to be very tactical to find the right balance for yourself, to where how much you want to rely on a single cloud provider, how much you want to take into your own hands, even though you're running everything on the cloud. But yeah, that's very important. And usually cloud providers don't push that because they want you to stick with them. But yeah, this is something as an organization you want to take care for yourself.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not just the organization taking care of it. I mean, this is what we do for clients all the time.
Right,
We
exactly.
help them evaluate the different, options out there because we've seen, almost all of it from experience, from, just keeping up on the technologies. So, I mean, this is something we do. We tell or help clients make that decision. And all of this is really interesting to me because I actually have a fear of some of the tools that are out there that are low code and no code. You're giving up a lot of your flexibility to get to market faster. I know, Fuad, you're a big
Well, I think we have to
proponent
look at
of
it.
low code and no code.
You have to
What's
look
your
at it in
take
a.
on it?
You have to look at it in a POC concept. So low codes, they are really handy in terms of POC. But as you have, an actual use case, you have to evaluate when is the right time to move out of the POC to an actual version. But for example, Google App Sheet, right, is the perfect example of transformative way of working. Now you can make an app within 30 minutes and your entire workforce, if it's a small 20, 30 people, actually that'd be good enough. But however, if you now learn that what you built for 30 people internally could be useful for the entire world, you need to think differently in terms of its scalability and architecture. AppSheet may not be the proper choice, but your POC, right, that it could be fitting perfectly for that.
Absolutely, and I think that's where it lives because if you read the straight up marketing, it's like, oh, just build your app and it'll run forever on it. But yeah, that's not quite the reality of it, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Parth, you're gonna say something.
Yeah. So it's like, imagine Google Docs saying you can't open your documents anywhere else other than Google Docs. You can't export them, and you need Google Docs to view them. It's something like that. That would be terrible if we couldn't export documents.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a similar situation.
We almost had that for a brief minute there when Office was still the installed, Office generation or document generation, program of choice. I mean, for years until I got Google, actually until I got my Gmail account, I was depending on, let's say weak alternatives to Word to open Word documents. But that's actually one of the benefits of the cloud. I think because of the cloud era, actually, documents have become pretty universal. You can open your documents pretty much anywhere, and I think that's a transformative tool right there.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention also, again, reiterating that small and medium-sized businesses, they are the least disadvantaged, and we mentioned a number of tools that they can actually start using and seeing benefits from it. Google Analytics 4 is one of them. When you actually configure them with your transactional and economic value events and so forth, you'd be able to visualize predictive metrics like which segment of your visitors are going to convert, most likely to convert, and so forth. And that will allow you to focus on that segment closer. So you can actually.
Do you have to be a mathematician to do that, Fuad, or is that made easy?
You don't have to do anything. You just have to have Google Analytics 4 set up properly. and the rest, people like me can do it. So anyone can do it.
People like me. I love that. Yeah, and that's a big thing we do for clients as well, is get them set up and make sure that their data is actually actionable in things like GA4. And you'd be surprised how many people out there are still stuck in the data silo situation where, they've gone to the cloud for some of it. They still have some offline stuff. They still have multiple cloud things, and none of it talks to each other. And I think that's, one of the big things we find a lot and love helping people do, is connect all of this together, because, like, there's so many options out there in the cloud. How do you make it all talk?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is you hire us.
Absolutely. So in this era, we are asking ourselves, how do you work smarter? How do you collaborate better? And how do you achieve, things that are, completely new ways of thinking and doing things and achieving things. So we have seen concepts, we have seen tactics, we have seen, how CI/CD really transforms the ability of taking things so much faster, working in harmony, kind of. We have seen tools like BlueCap and Workspace really help small and medium-sized businesses to adopt these technologies, and really, innovate across your organizations. If you work with Google Workspace, you probably have seen AI is everywhere. As you write in your document, you get a document summary, so much. And you actually, if you're working on Excel sheet, you don't have to be a data scientist. You actually click on insights at the bottom right, and you can see, different graphs that will be created automatically for you. And you could pick and choose which one would probably, most important for you, and so forth. So working smartly and keeping flexibility as you take advantage of the bigger concept of cloud is really, really important. And we have seen, security is a big concern for all businesses. We hear that at least, 1 out of 5 business is going to be affected with ransomware in the next couple of years. So therefore, as we take advantage of all these capabilities, we also need to be very mindful of our security out there. And for that, you have your infrastructure security that you need to be mindful, and you need to also prepare your users. 50% of the other use cases where we see why security falls through is that we need to know overall what is safe for us, what is not, what we can click, what we can click. But technology can give us a lot of assistance out.
If you leave it at the user level, the user will always be the breakpoint 100% of the time. I mean, all the biggest hacks we've heard in recent history is because someone with too much access got fooled. So these cloud technologies help protect you from that by, using things like AI to actually analyze, what users are doing, what they're looking at, what they're being sent, what they're opening. It's more critical than ever.
We had a use case recently, right, where we saw how AI really helped us prevent the attack.
Yeah, that was on one of our client sites. We had upgraded Cloud Armor very recently, and we saw that it had built a profile using AI of a malicious attack. And when you think of what goes into that, I mean, it has to understand your application architecture, and it has to understand what users are supposed to do versus what they are not normally doing, and then kind of build a profile on that to automatically shape traffic and get the malicious users out and continue to serve the good users, which it did, which is cool. And it's go ahead.
If we think about how we prevent it without the AI, we can see how much human intervention it would have taken.
Yes.
Just to stop that, right? So,
well, I mean, you would have to profile it yourself. You'd have to be like, all right,
Exactly.
this traffic shouldn't be going here. Let me build a rule. No, but let me validate that rule first. Let's think of all the use cases where this might actually it's a lot of work.
Analyze the patterns that they're hitting on
Yeah.
on the application. Yeah.
And then we've had experiences in the past where we've seen DDoSs on wide open. Not here. I'm talking years and years ago at different organizations, but where open applications that are just using some basic CDN and they're getting flooded with traffic for whatever reason. And you don't have to be government. You don't have to be some big company to get DDoSed. I mean, a couple people who are just practicing, are going to pick you at random, perhaps. I mean, we see it all the time. And to deal with a DDoS without these tools is almost impossible. You almost have to sit there and ride it out. Because if you don't have cloud infrastructure in place, what are you going to do? I mean, if the traffic in a DDoS is already hitting your server, it's too late. It has to be blocked in the infrastructure way out, as far out as you can get it. So, I mean, another example of, the critical nature of this cloud infrastructure, because sorry to be a little bit long-winded on this. This is one of the things I've seen a lot is DDoSs and attempted hacks. It's if you have, some hosting provider that's just giving you web hosting and they don't have, a CDN, they don't have all these other tools in place. Your website is wide open. It's out to the web. I mean, just because you have shared hosting doesn't mean you're protected. Like maybe the server won't get hacked, or the server as a whole, but that's actually not the majority of attacks. It's your website or, your application being hacked directly, and that's a subset of the server. Your host doesn't really care because the risk to them is minimal. You're segmented off from the rest of their customers. So it's still up to you as the business owner, website owner, to protect your website from the infrastructure level. So, I mean, a lot is on you when you're not using something like GCP properly set up. I mean, you think that you've paid GoDaddy or whoever and your website's up, is secure and all this stuff, but it really is just the bare minimum to protect their own infrastructure. They're not protecting you necessarily.
Yeah, that was great. Now I think that's 1 hour. We should.
Oh yeah, we've been long on this one, but it's a topic we're passionate about. We're all very, very big on cloud and cloud tech.
Well, we're going to do a series on cloud transformation. We're going to cover supply chain, how cloud is transforming that. We're going to do one on healthcare and cloud. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, always reach out to us. And if you have any cloud initiatives, it is a business imperative. We can help.
Absolutely.
Give us a shout. And in the meantime, happy cloud transformation.
Thanks for joining us, guys.